Buckle up, Buckeye fans. It's game week.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Monday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Here on Monday, August 26th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football HC is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. Ohio State's 2024 campaign is almost started, and I cannot wait to see what the Buckeyes do when they step on the field on Saturday afternoon, 3:30 p.m. kickoff on CBS against Akron. It's a lesser opponent, but Ohio State can still show up and show out and let everyone know that the talk that's been surrounding them, the people that have been hyping them up, that the hype is real. You can buy into what Ohio State is putting on the field. They can show up and show all that over the weekend. By doing what? Exerting their will. And Ohio State must exert their will all season long if they want to accomplish all their goals, which include winning the national championship. In an expanded playoff, yes, it's going to be a little bit different of a feel and a vibe in December leading into January. We'll touch on that in a second. But before you get to January or even December in the playoff, you got this weekend. You got next weekend. You got a few games. You got a big game against Oregon. You got a few more games. You got a big game against Penn State. You got a few more games. You got a big game against Michigan. Why did I focus on those three games? Those are the big games. If you just look at Ohio State's schedule and the players and say, hey, do they have to show up for every game? Some people may say no. Well, when do they have to show up? In Autzen Stadium, at Beaver Stadium, in Ohio Stadium when Michigan comes to town. And Nebraska's coming in for homecoming. Show up then. But you really got to make sure you show up all the other games. I mean, just for those three big games. And I would say, yes, that's true, but that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is from Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State, and the rest of the schedule, Ohio State must show up and show out and exert their will against every opponent. Because at one moment you try to take a play off or take a few series off or take a whole game off, that could be the game that sets you back mentally. That could be the game that messes up the chemistry. That couldn't be the game that kind of gets you off of the path you were on to win the national championship. And no, it might not. That game might not result in a loss. However, think back to 2015. People saw before the Michigan State game things unraveling before what we witnessed that year in 2015 when Michigan State beat Ohio State with a last-second walk-off field goal. The Michigan State, that kicker kicked that year. People saw things unraveling, and I did myself, things unraveling before that game happened. Now, Ohio State, I think they only had one loss that year, went on to win another bowl game. But you saw, hey, something ain't right. What can we do to fix the thing? I think it was a couple years ago. Ohio State, first 6 games of the year, man, they were moving. They were rolling. And then what happened? Iowa and the rest of the games that year. And even though Ohio State won that game very large margin that year against Iowa, something didn't feel right. Something didn't look right. Forget the feeling. My eyeballs told me something is off. And we got to see later on that year how things were just a tad off, just a little bit off at Ohio State. So that's why I mentioned exerting your will every single week. And it's not just going for the players. This goes to the coaches too. Ryan Day brought in Chip Kelly. Buckeye still have Jim Knowles. They brought in Carlos Lockwood. Alford got a new contract, but it was not a multi-year contract. He ended up going to Ann Arbor. That might come up later in the week. Not really sure. But Ryan Day and Nat Guerrieri, no longer having Perry Eliano, has made some changes to the offensive coaching staff, the defensive coaching staffs, having more analysts as well. Ryan Day did a lot of things this offseason that he didn't normally do. But he realized, hey, for Ohio State to be the best team it could be this year, I got to give up play calling. I think it was something we all know was something he wanted to do last season. But did he truly want to hand play calling over to Brian Hartline, who had never called offensive plays before at Ohio State? No, probably not. That's not saying he didn't get Hartline's input on the sideline during games, but I don't think Ryan Day truly had the 100% belief in Hartline to get things done. Now you got Chip Kelly. Now you got Jim Knowles. What do those two guys have in common? They're great on their sides of the ball. Knowles, phenomenal on defense. Kelly, phenomenal on offense. But they also both have previous experience as head coaches in college football. That's one luxury Ohio State has that most other college football teams in the country don't have. They don't have a coordinator on two coordinators for each side of the ball that have been previous head coaches. So Ryan Day is not only trusting guys with their sides of the ball that are great on those sides of the ball, but also guys that know how to handle the entire team. And I think it's a big reason why Ryan Day is comfortable handing the keys to the offense over to Chip Kelly, why he started calling Jim Knowles the head coach of the defense. Why? That's what they are great at. And I do think this year for Ryan Day is going to have to do a lot of things, maybe a few things different, tweak some things. But Ryan Day realizes if he wants to be the best coach at Ohio State, he has to 100% put 100% trust in the coaches that are there. And I think for what we've seen so far, Fry's done a whole lot of good things with developing the O-line for this year. Coach Key has done a great job with the tight ends. Hartline, we all know. Ohio State's wide receiver room at the top might be 5 or 6 deep of guys that can legitimately play this year. Not guys that can play in rotation that are just there to fill a spot. No, 5 or 6 guys in rotation that can play this year. I mean, you got 4 guys that will start anywhere in the country, and they're at Ohio State in Ibuka, Smith, Tate, and I truly believe Ohio State will play 4 receivers. If they go 4 wide with Henderson in the backfield or Junkins in the backfield, I feel sorry for the opposing defense. How do you stop that? You got 4 wide. You're going to bring in a dime package? Okay. What does that do? Well, you got smaller guys on the field trying to tackle Junkins or Henderson. Good luck. You might be quick enough, but you might not be physical enough. Good luck. The Buckeyes all year long must exert their will. And when exerting your will, if you want to win the national championship, which is what Ohio State wants to do this year and every single year, it starts up front. It starts with the guys in the trenches, O-line and D-line. We all know, recently heard Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams call themselves TNT. Okay, cool. Dynamite, great. Bring the boom when you're on the field on Saturday afternoons in the fall. I believe they will. I think those 2 guys will be a great duo. You got Tuimoloau and Sawyer. I believe the Buckeyes will be able to handle and control the line of scrimmage on defense. On offense, I'm going to go out on the limb right now, but without seeing a game, one of my predictions for Ohio State's offensive line is that they will play better this year than they did last year. And I think it'll be a significant jump. I think it'll be an early sign. You won't be able to wait till games 3 or 4 or 5. You'll be able to see it early in the game against Akron that Ohio State's O-line is going to play better. And I don't care if it's Shabola at right guard or Hinsman at right guard, or maybe you got McLaughlin and Hinsman swinging back and forth between right guard and center. I don't care what combination of the 5 on the O-line. I believe the O-line will not only play better this year, but they'll also be able to do some things running the ball this year that they weren't able to do last year, and those things were hindered because of the O-line. Yeah, some things were hindered because of the backfield, but the things last year that were hindered because of the O-line, they won't have those problems this year. The Buckeyes must exert their will in 2024 if they want to win the college football playoff national championship. The first one in a 12-team format. That's weird to say, but it is here. One thing that is here is the first of 5 questions, big questions that your boy has heading into the Buckeyes 2024 campaign. And the first one is about Ryan Day. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Hey, Locked on Buckeyes fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you are going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing their training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. To download the game and download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service is Central Ohio. Everything you need for in-home and backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Austin, Canada, billiards, and more. And the grills, whether you like charcoal or gas or wood-fired, Billiards Plus has a perfect setup for all grillers. They are family-owned and operated, and when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. College football is back, and it's not too late to catch up before the season kicks off. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. You can get it all from Locked On stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoff? What teams will cause chaos in their new conferences? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. 2024 will be an interesting season for Ryan Day. Ryan Day, for the first time since taking over as head coach for the Buckeyes, he is not going to call offensive plays. So, yes, he's going to have more oversight, be more of an overseer, or some may say a CEO of the football program, which is great. But how will Ryan Day handle this new role on the sideline, especially when things are a little iffy on offense? That's one question I have, but that's not the main question I have about Ryan Day heading into this season. If I were just to sit down and write down a list of questions for Day, I could probably pull up this whole notebook here for those of you watching on the YouTube. I can fill a whole notebook up with questions about Day, but one of the main ones I have about him right now, will Ryan Day be aggressive this year? I think that's a main one. And when I think about aggressive for Ryan Day, I go back to the Georgia game. I believe it was a 2022 season. It was one of those years that was a little different, a little odd for Ohio State as far as in that game, because what you saw that day from Ryan Day wasn't the aggressive nature you saw all year from Ryan Day. I'm not saying that there's a bad time for Ryan Day to not be aggressive or the time that Ryan Day should be more aggressive. I love the aggressive Ryan Day because what did you find? He was way more fired up in that game than you normally saw him. Yeah, Ryan Day's an aggressive guy. He's fiery and all those things. And people that know him personally, they would describe him as a fiery guy. For some reason in the regular season, you don't always get that version of Day as far as the way he's calling plays, the emotion on the sidelines, things of that nature. Well, this year with Ryan Day not actually being the guy, he's not calling offensive plays, he ain't calling defensive plays. He might try to take a little bit more of a back seat and not be as aggressive as he wants to be or needs to be. I don't think it's what Ohio State needs this year. I think Ohio State needs that aggressive Ryan Day. One person said the rosy-cheeked assassin. I don't care what you want to call him. Somebody gotta just get today and say, hey, Day, we know what this team is. We know what they got. We know the type of talent on the team. We know what motivates them. Hey, just be yourself. And if being you is aggressive and being fiery, so be it. Let the chips fall where they may, and let's go out here and win the national championship. And I make that statement on purpose because I think it's what Ohio State needs this year from Ryan Day. They need him to be aggressive, 100%. Every day of the weekend, twice on Sunday, Day needs to be aggressive. Because if your coach is aggressive, if your coach is doing things that shows, hey, this is his mindset from Jump Street, it's going to propel you and encourage you to be more aggressive. And you're the ones out there on the field. Yeah, aggression may start in the trenches in the O-line and D-line, maybe go back to the linebackers, and may go out to the tight ends and running backs. But if I'm a wide receiver and my coach is a little bit aggressive, a little bit maybe whacked out a little bit in the head, I got a story here for you in a second. And if they see that from you, what is that going to be able to, what would that compel you to do? Maybe not be as cuckoo or crazy as him, but it might encourage you to be a little bit more crazy, a little bit out there, a little bit wild. I remember I was back playing high school football at Lawrence Central, and unfortunately, LC lost to LN in the yearly rivalry game. It hurts, it stings. But let's get away from that because that was fresh off my memory. A few years ago, about 20 years ago now, I remember it was halftime of a football game, sophomore or junior year, and Coach Barthel was a little bit out there, a little bit wacky. He was one of those football coaches, had a few screws loose, maybe 10, a little bit more than few. I mean, he was just that kind of guy. And so Coach Barthel at halftime, I forget exactly what his halftime speech was or who we were playing or anything like that. Circumstances of halftime, I have no idea. All I remember was Barthel was trying to get everybody hyped up to go out there to win the game. That's what we want to do. You play to win the game, as Herb Edwards says. And so Barthel was in the locker room. Actually, we were in the small gym at halftime. Got the chalkboard out, did a little diagram, wrote some stuff down on the chalkboard. Hey, on this, we're going to re-diagram this play to kind of tell you what we're going to do moving forward. Great, that's cool. Then all of a sudden, Barthel got everybody up, got everybody hyped, got everybody in a huddle. He started yelling, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Next thing we know, I don't know what the words that were actually coming out of his mouth, but I remember this. He headbutted somebody. He did something a little bit crazy to get everybody hyped up, to do a little bit something to go out on the field and to win the game. Now, Barthel, that's to headbutt somebody, you got to be a little wild because Barthel didn't have a helmet on. The player he headbutted did. So it's not head-to-head, and Barthel's like, hey, let me give you a concussion real quick. No, Barthel's like, maybe I'm going to give myself a concussion. But what did you find? Barthel did something a little bit crazy. He is a few screws. Trust me, if that story's just one, I got some more for you that can confirm that this man was just not all the way there in the head. But Barthel did something a little bit crazy, a little bit abnormal. I believe we went out there and won the game, but also some players bought into, hey, coach going doing this at halftime before we go back on the field. I got to make sure I do that and then some by busting heads when we go back on the field that day. Ryan Day, I ain't saying Ryan Day has to come out here and bust somebody's head via a headbutt. No, y'all, that's wild. That is wild. But Ryan Day does need to do is make sure everybody knows we got to be aggressive and maybe tweak one thing or two things to let everyone know these tweaks are for us to be more aggressive, for me to be more aggressive on the field. So I wonder if Ryan Day will be aggressive all year long. I also believe that's what Ryan Day needs, what the Buckeyes need from Ryan Day this year. Speaking of what the Buckeyes need, not on the football field in 2024, but in recruiting, is a major boost on the online recruiting, and they got that over the weekend. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Tired after lunch? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. 5 Hour Energy is a brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. Stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5 Hour Energy shots. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. Ohio State got a major boost in their O-line recruiting over the weekend as four-star offensive lineman Javen McFadden committed to Ohio State. This is something that if people that have been following Ohio State O-line recruiting, just recruiting in general, there's been a gap. There's been a hole. There's been something missing from this group. Hey, you got guys in the state of Ohio. Will you go out there and get somebody outside of the state? And they did just that. This young man is from Maryland, Riverdale Baptist High School in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, to be exact. And he is so good. He is so much fun to watch. Probably going to be an interior offensive lineman down the road for Ohio State, which is great. At 6'5", 300, don't let the 300 or 6'5" scare you from him playing on the interior. He is someone that with a couple years of development and in Ohio State's strength and conditioning program, with everything it entails, he will be just fine. And for Justin Fry and Ryan Day, this couldn't have come at a better time. Josh Petty went to Georgia Tech. David Sanders Jr. went to Tennessee. Two of your top targets in the class, in the cycle, went elsewhere. Ohio State before that only had two guys on the offensive line that were committed, and those two guys were in-state guys in Jake Cook and Carter Lowe. Carter Lowe, really good, don't get me wrong, but you need other guys. You need more guys on the O-line. Brian Smith, Locked On recruiting analyst last week, discussed this topic, and he even talked about saying, hey, 3 is a minimum. A minimum. You probably want to just get 4 or 5 every single cycle because, one, you know guys are going to transfer. 2, you're going to graduate guys. And 3, some guys might not transfer, might not be ready to graduate, and they just might not develop. So you need to get 4, maybe 5 guys every cycle just to keep the cupboard where it needs to be. Well, Ohio State struggled a little bit. It's going to happen. Remember a couple years ago, the Everydayers realized and remember that we were talking about this with D-line recruiting, because it seemed like Ohio State was missing out on D-end or upper-level defensive linemen on recruits every single year. I remember shows on this shows we did, multiple shows about Ohio State trying to go after Mateo Uiagalelei, trying to go after Keon Keeley, trying to go after Damon Wilson. What happened? Didn't win any of them. People were saying Larry Johnson this, Larry Johnson that. Now, the one difference, there's a lot of differences between Justin Fryer and Larry Johnson, but one of them is Larry Johnson, he can miss on a few. He ain't going to miss on all of them. Remember Edric Houston, who's at Ohio State, who was one of those guys that a couple years ago, some Buckeye fans were saying, oh, he's going to miss out on this one, but he didn't. Justin Fry has a good track record, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't been around long enough to even try to make a resume like Larry Johnson's. But it could happen. This is great for the Buckeyes. One thing I would tell you about this recruitment and about any recruitment is just don't base everything off of what a recruiting database says, because via 247 Sports composite rankings, he's a 4-star recruit. That's great. If we just stop there, that's huge. But the composite ranking has him as being the 407th best recruit and the 25th best interior offensive lineman. So when you put those two things into action, 407, I wouldn't put any stock into it. Number 25, okay, cool. Maybe you say it needs to be top 15 or nothing. Maybe it needs to be a top 300 or nothing. Whatever your mindset is, let the film show you what kind of player it is. Isaiah West is an example. Many of you have been around here. The Everydayers have heard numerous shows about Isaiah West before he committed to Ohio State, even after he became a Buckeye commit. What did he find? The recruiting database has had him underrated. And I base that off of, well, this is what I think a 3-star athlete is and a 4-star athlete is and a 5-star athlete is. Well, when I watch Isaiah West, he's not a low or a high 3-star. He's an easy, solid 4-star, upper tier 4-star. I wouldn't go 5-star just yet, but during his final year playing high school ball, he could definitely jump and become not only a 4-star guy, he can become a 5-star guy based off how he plays. And that's with McFadden. He is someone that the Buckeyes can look at and say, oh, you're beefing up our recruiting. Great. What can he be on the field? Hey, he can be a solid piece on the interior of Ohio State's offensive line. Probably more guard than center, but You need guys like this. A physical presence, wants to impose his will, wins at the line of scrimmage. And I recently went back. Actually, I think it's just popped up on Twitter. He was doing some drills at a camp, and it was pass rush drills. He was playing guard. And of course, in this clip, it's highlights, so you can't just say this is what he's going to be every single time. But in the clip, he didn't lose, to the point that he was stalling and stopping the defender, the D lineman, that was trying to get past him. And he said, no. I mean, just audibly coming out saying no. Just that fierce. And he physically looks like a guy that, hey, you're going to tweak some things when you get to the next level, but you don't have to do a major overhaul of his body. He is ready, physically ready to make some slight tweaks, get his body right to play at Ohio State. Now, could be a 1 or 2 year project, which isn't a problem because that's what you expect from offensive linemen anyway when they get to college. Y'all, thank you once again for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Buckeye fans, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317 at gmail.com. Out of here on a Monday. We'll see you next time.